I feel the power. I feel the power.
The size and everything else comparatively to this huge PC, that it can, render that in about half the time. That's definitely impressive, for sure.
This is the M2 Pro Mac Mini. It's Apple's most powerful and compact desktop Mac that you can buy right now. And I've been living with this thing for the past 3 months to see what's the deal with these next generation Apple silicons. TLDR, these machines are unbelievably fast, but you probably knew that from all the review videos you've watched. Heck, I wanted to see for myself how much faster M2 Pro was compared to my M1 Pro MacBook Pro that I've been using for more than a year to produce the videos that you see here on the channel. But at the same time, I wanted to approach this video from a different angle. I didn't want to narrate this video from solely a content creator's perspective, but rather put this Mac Mini into the hands of some talented professionals here in Toronto and hear what they have to say. So we'll be listening to their side of the story using the Mac Mini. So I hope this video gives you guys an insight into how this Mac Mini performs in real-world scenarios. Now, if we're looking at raw performance differences, honestly, it isn't a whole lot of improvement, guys, especially if you're a content creator rocking an M1 Pro Mac. You're maybe saving a minute or so worth of export times, which isn't a whole lot. I guess the biggest difference you'll notice is in advanced 3D rendering applications like Autodesk Maya and Houdini. The M2 Pro certainly helps shave some time in complex projects thanks to higher clock speeds, a few extra cores, and more cache. But let's face it, the M1 family was already a great platform to work with. Its impressive performance and power efficiency were one of the main reasons why I switched from my PC, except for the price. And I don't see myself going back anytime soon. But when Apple dropped their Pro-grade chip into the Mac Mini, it just unlocked a whole lot of potential for creators, producers, or just anyone working in the creative industry who don't necessarily have the means to invest thousands and thousands of dollars in a system that can keep up with their workflow. This thing starts at $1,300, guys, and I cannot emphasize the value you're getting from this machine. It's built out of a solid block of aluminum that only takes up 1.4 liters on your desk. Seriously, you won't even notice that it's there. Plus, it runs extremely cool and quiet. I mean, these thermal images can speak for themselves. The port selection is pretty generous with 4 Thunderbolt 4 ports, HDMI, 10G Ethernet, which is optional, and a few USB Type-A ports. That's more than my MacBook Pro. And the specs that I have over here is the baseline config. So 10-core CPU, 16-core GPU, 16 gigs of unified memory, and a 1 terabyte SSD. Now you can certainly upgrade to more cores, twice the memory, and up to 8 terabytes of SSD storage, but that's gonna significantly drive the cost up. Anyways, enough about me talking about this Mac Mini. Let's head out and drop this thing off to Stefan. Let's go. I just realized the Mac Mini is over there, so I gotta unplug that and head out. So let's go.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. Yourself?
Good to see you, man.
You as well, baby.
All right. So listen, I got something for you.
Awesome.
All right? This right here is the new M2 Pro Mac Mini. It literally fits inside a backpack.
That's beautiful.
I want you to go crazy with this thing, man.
It's gonna be a beast.
Got a lot of power. Go crazy. I'll check in with you in a week.
100%. Let's get it done.
See how you guys like it.
Can't wait to make some magic with this. Thank you,
Let's do this, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, forever, never, never, yeah, 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 yeah.
Steph, Jet, how do I describe it? How do I call you? Like,
I
how do you
mean,
go by?
Jet works, yeah, on these circumstances. So, started making music in high school. The first kind of step of the journey was production. So I downloaded a software called FL Studio and just messed around with it. I originally had the demo version, as most people did at the time. Working with another student at the school, eventually kept being consistent, worked with a bunch of different producers, moved into our own studio. This is actually the second home of Crendon Studios, I would say. Personally, like if I'm recording myself, I'll use Logic, and again, there's a bunch of different plugins within Logic. The Waves bundle, which is great. Obviously, at this point, everybody's using some sort of tuning, reverbs, all that kind of like processing and stuff that goes within Logic. So that's kind of the key software that I use right now, and then the talented team that I work with has Ableton, Logic as well, FL Studio, kind of a whole, there's different purposes for different DAWs they're called, right? So like, for example, we'll record certain things in Cubase, we'll do production in Ableton, some production in FL Studio, and it all ends up in one file. And I believe gets mixed in Cubase, which is the last. Because I've been doing music for a while, I've seen evolution of computers and worked on everything from the old Mac towers to, you know, now more modern systems and stuff like that. Even to this day, a lot of people still choose to be on an older system because of compatibility, because of USB ports, because of, you know, comfort, to be honest with you, or again, they don't have the means necessarily to be able to upgrade. So you are working on older systems, sometimes with updated software, and that confliction can definitely ruin a workflow. So when you're making music, especially, you know, I'm happy to say and proud to say that when myself and my team makes these songs, you know, a lot of them are very complex. There's a lot of layers, there's a lot of processing, there's a lot of vocals, there's a lot of real instruments that we're playing. So if you're writing and the computer isn't able to keep up, or the system is crashing, or you know, you're not able to get audio out without it crackling or buffering and stuff like that, that's where the workflow really gets interrupted. A lot of the times too, if I'm in a session and I'm in the booth recording, as much as like I love being there and it's, you know, an awesome experience every time, you can definitely see frustration on the engineer or producer's face at times when their computer isn't able to perform at a level that I have to engage with or they have to engage with. And you can see the frustration on their face before you see it on mine because they're looking at it. So if I'm in the booth recording, I'm always looking to them for affirmation or for positive, like if a line was good or if we got a good take of something, they're smiling, they're excited, hey, let's, you know, take the next part or whatever. Obviously, if something's interrupting that workflow, I'm looking over and I see them in distress. Like, I think that's the biggest thing for me is when, in my situation where I have such an amazing team around and their lives are easier, that makes my life easier. And definitely saw today after using the computer that there is a lot of joy being brought off of processing power. And again, whenever, you know, you're passionate about things, it's the smallest details that bring the biggest joy. And something like computer processing power and opening up 30 plugins on a session, essentially, you know, you wouldn't be able to handle on necessarily an older system or, you know, something without the same processing power. When you're able to do that, and you just say, wow, the opportunities here are endless. And, you know, that's what's really cool for me, I would say. And again, obviously just the improvement of workflow, like I said, there's no downtime. The more that's reduced, just the easier the workflow is and the faster songs get created and the more organic and authentic the songs become. I think there's still some OS like compatibility issues that we need to, with certain plugins, because again, when you're dealing with music projects and there's a lot of different effects, there's a lot of different sounds, sound libraries, you want to make sure that you have all those tools to access, because that's, again, you're comfortable with certain things and you know how to kind of maneuver around them. So to be able to access those tools when you need them is huge, and I think that was kind of one of the only minor issues that we came about. Obviously USB-Cs are huge and plentiful, but then again, going back to it, a lot of the gear that we use, the MIDI controllers, I think we track drums audio, but the drum can be set up as a MIDI as well, and that uses USB. A lot of the software now has a iLock, which is a, you know, physical USB essentially that gets put in. So I definitely think there's a lot, even without the use of adapters, there's a lot that can be done. We ran multiple screens to the USB-C, which is awesome as well. When you're dealing with these programs and these DAWs and all the effects that run with it as well, you know, when you're limited to real estate on the screen, things can get very clouded. And again, workflow gets interrupted. So when you're able to kind of move your mixers, your effects, sometimes you want to get creative and watch a anime or something like that, or a cartoon, and you want to have it on a screen just for vibes. Like, you know, it's good to be able to have that real estate to work with and utilize it as much as possible. Having lyrics to be able to put on a screen where the M1, for example, which we've used in the past, doesn't have the same screen sharing display. You know, it's only mirrored image. So if you want to be able to have the lyrics in the booth while somebody's recording so they're not on their phone, or, you know, if their phone doesn't have battery, it's like, okay, cool, I can just put it on the screen right here. And even just workflow, again, from booth to control station, it's a lot better to have that access to that real estate in those displays. If you're making music that is pushing boundaries and you're serious about it and you've got, you know, live instrumentation, you're really processing the audio, you're throwing effect on it, you're automating volume, panning, and automating effects and stuff like that, you're gonna need processing power. Like when you think of the evolution of somebody who's getting better in their craft, learning, getting more experience, I think that with that, you obviously have to think about other elements like the hardware that you're using, the softwares that you're using, the power that you're using, right? I definitely think that you're able to, the results are endless if you really want to use the M2 and, use the processing, get better plugins, use more automation and stuff like that, really get into the intricacies of making really special music. I think, it's definitely a huge step in the right direction for sure. Yeah, so all platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Jet Set Forever is the stage name, and yeah, it's forever and ever and ever, always.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it, no problem at all, thank you.
Wow, that was an incredible experience. Honestly, being with Stefan and the team in their creative element was just words can't describe how awesome it was, but that was an incredible story. Now I'm gonna drop off this Mac Mini to Dustin. This man is an incredible photographer, focuses on landscape stuff. I just fell in love with his work on Instagram, so I reached out to him to see if he wanted to try out the new Mac Mini. And yeah, I'm just on my way to drop this off at his place and see what he has to say.
How's it going? I have some goodies for you.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah?
So I'm a photographer here in Toronto. I love shooting all things city. So architecture is really, really what I love. You'll find me out in the financial district with my camera. That's usually where I live. I'm taking photos of buildings. Oftentimes people look at me and say, what are you taking photos of? Look up. That's what I always tell them. Ever since I was a kid, I've loved like buildings, just structures and like, bridges and just things that were large. And, mix that with, my photography passion, which I kind of just grew naturally just by loving those two things, and said, let's pick up a camera, take photos of the things that I love. I shoot with the Sony A7 R4. The files that it records are very large. And I oftentimes shoot, several hundred to 1,000 photos on one photo shoot. So, that requires a lot of compute power. The PC that I currently use, it's pretty great for handling those kinds of files. My process then after importing all the photos that I've taken is to usually use Lightroom and Photoshop. Those are the two key pieces of software I use to edit my photos. I don't just use Lightroom alone. I usually finish the photo with Photoshop. Add a lot of like lighting effects and glows and things like that to really kind of pop the photo. I'm used to what my PC can do, but I said, okay, let's give this Mac a try. I've heard many great things about the Apple Silicon, so I'm like, let's put it to the test. Let's see how my process works with this new machine. And I have to say, it was pretty fantastic overall. I would say rendering and exporting large amounts of photos, raw photos, like really, really big files, night and day difference between my current PC and the M2. Sometimes, more than half in terms of speed. So that kind of blew my expectations. And the funny thing is, it doesn't get hot. It doesn't really break a sweat. You don't really hear the machine that it's running. That kind of shocked me, because at first I was like, well, is it doing something? Is this like, what's happening here? It was kind of surprising. That really kind of surprised me. I wasn't expecting that. Overall, I would say it was very much so like using the Mac version of my PC. So the performance that I normally rely on my PC, I did find in the Mac, and in many ways, rendering specifically and exporting huge amounts of files exceeded those expectations. But overall, I would say the speed of those tasks could have maybe been a little bit faster. I was kind of expecting a little bit more. So yeah, I would say, if I had a more powerful machine, it would probably, be a little better. Not having extra USB ports, USB-A ports is a pretty big deal. And the lack of an SD card reader, that was a big one too. So I was, looking and fishing for, a reader when I thought maybe that should just easily be there. So those types of things were a little frustrating, but from the physical form, I would say, yeah, I wish it was a little bit bigger, maybe to have a few extra ports. Just the size difference alone, it's quite huge. So having one half of my desk taken up by the PC, if I use the Mac, I wouldn't have that issue. I'd have all that space back. We had a really hot week here, and it was, a good coming up to 30 degrees inside this place.
Yeah.
So having a furnace, pretty well, of a PC added quite a lot to that heat, which was, frustrating. I will say the Mac is cool to the touch, even at its highest performance. So I was really blown away with that. I would easily recommend anybody, especially in the creative kind of industries, a photographer or anybody using the Adobe Creative apps, it's 100% recommendation. I mean, for that price point, it's hard to beat.
Well, there you have it, guys. Now, Apple isn't sponsoring this video. In fact, full disclosure, they did send us a review unit for us to test out, but I want to share a different perspective with you guys. The Mac Mini with the M2 Pro chip is pretty amazing. Are there a few kinks to iron out? Absolutely. I mean, the conversations I had with Jed, especially when it comes to plugin support, was really interesting, and hopefully it'll get addressed in the future. But if we just look at the big picture, or just the future of what this silicon can expand into, the possibilities are endless. On that note, thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to give some love to Stefan and Dustin. I'll make sure to leave their Instagram handles down below. Huge thanks to you guys for being a part of this video. I don't think none of this would have happened without you guys. So yeah, I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Oh, and spend responsibly.